Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles Sabanson, and welcome you guys to another episode of the DREAMERSPRO show. We cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment. And we give you guys a fresh perspective on things that we see. And today we had a really fun show in store for you guys. But before we get into it, please make sure you like the video and sub to the channel. Let's get into this topic here. Now, we recently produced the show about, 4 to 5 days ago. And that show was centered on some comments that former ESPN analyst, former NBA coach, Jeff Van Gundy had to make about what it was like, the process of being let go and being fired by ESPN when they were having their downsizing, when they let go of Max Kellerman, Keyshawn Johnson, Mark Jackson, his partner, and all of that. And essentially what happened was Mark Jackson, who's on Cameron and Mace's show, Come Talk to Me, invited Jeff Van Gundy on. And during their sit down, he essentially asked Jeff Van Gundy to describe what that process was like of being fired. Right? Because apparently it was a very difficult one and he had a very difficult situation. So what we want to do is just a quick refresher. I want to quickly play what Jeff Van Gundy had to say on Cam and Mace's show, Come Talk to Me, about what it was like being let go by ESPN. And we'll come back and continue on the show. Take a listen to him here. So you heard what he had to say. So what happened? This afternoon, we're just going through looking for some content. And apparently there was a story that took place on Dan Le Batard's show where Stan Van Gundy, who's Jeff Van Gundy's brother, where he had gone on this show to essentially talk about a bunch of different things. And Dan Le Batard then essentially asked him, from your vantage point, what was that situation like when ESPN fired and essentially blindsided Jeff Van Gundy during when they were, last year when they were downsizing? And if you know anything about Stan Van Gundy, he doesn't bite his tongue whatsoever. He basically said that they absolutely effed him over. And I'm sitting there like, damn. And they were like, well, do you think your brother going to feel a type of way for you saying this? He's like, yeah, but I'm just going to basically call it down the line because that's exactly what the hell happened. And that's exactly what everybody realized happened as well. So those are the comments that we want to focus on today's show. But before we even get into what Stan Van Gundy had to say, today's video is brought to you by our sponsor, PrizePicks, which is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. PrizePicks is really simple. Instead of just selecting a team, you just select 2 or more players, pick more or less their projected stats, and then you place your entry. For example, this week, I'm selecting 2 entries. Stephen Curry for more than 25 points, and then I got Anthony Davis for more than 2 blocks, and Damian Lillard for more than 4 3-pointers made. PrizePicks is also the only daily sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So for example, if you have a player who gets injured in the first half and doesn't return to the second half, that player gets automatically rebooted. What I also love about PrizePicks is that it offers weekly promotions like Taco Tuesdays. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value. So go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's go to prizepicks.com/CLNS, use code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. And remember, whenever you support this sponsor, you're supporting this channel. Thank you. So what we want to do now is I want you guys to take a listen to what Stan Van Gundy had to say on Dan Le Batard's show, and then we're going to come back and continue on the show. Take a listen to this here.
Your brother was let go by ESPN. He was very classy about it, quiet. I don't think he had anything to say about it. Understands that it's a business, but I understood at ESPN that it was a business too, and it didn't make it hurt less when I was caught off guard by that. What do you say to him in that spot when he leaves ESPN? Do you have anything to give him solace?
Well, I don't know that I could give him solace, and he was hurt by it. I mean, he'd worked for them for 17 years, and it wasn't even just the fact that they made the move. I mean, they him. I mean, the timing was awful. They waited until basically the NBA market in terms of coaching jobs, assistants jobs, front office jobs was already gone by to make the move. And then they, delayed on a buyout that would free him to work for people. I mean, after 17 years of being in arguably, I don't even know if it's arguably, the best, game broadcast booth in the business in basketball, and being the kind of person he is, ESPN on him. And so all I could do was basically tell him that that's how I saw the situation, and I felt awful for him. Listen, you're in this business and you're the same. I mean, this stuff happens in business. We've all been through it. We've been fired and everything else, but there's ways to do it and ways not to do it. I mean, I've been fired 4 times as a coach, and the one in Detroit, the guy handled it great. I mean, and so I feel a lot differently about him than I do about the other 3. And I thought ESPN was absolutely miserable to him after what he had given them for 17 years.
I'm thinking he would advise you not to say any of that.
Oh yeah, he would be upset when he finds out that I said it. He'll be upset, and that's okay. I mean, it was like the other day, Jose Pineda, who the Spanish broadcaster for the Miami Heat, he said to Brian Anderson before the game, he said, "Hey, when you guys say the Heat are undermanned," he said, "Eric doesn't want you to say that. He doesn't like it if you say that." And I'm thinking like, okay, I love Eric, but they're still undermanned and we're still going to say it. So, yeah, my brother wouldn't be happy if I was saying this, but it's what happened, and that's what I'm going to say. And you know what? I don't think anybody who knows the situation would disagree with me at all.
So you heard what Stan Van Gundy had to say. I had never thought about it in that way until he described it, especially in terms of the time of the firing. I think that what Stan Van Gundy was essentially saying was maybe Jeff Van Gundy had no idea he was being fired. Maybe he would appreciate it if he had a heads up. And that's why he was mentioning the time in which they did it, where all the head coaching jobs were filled, where all the assistant jobs were filled. And now it makes sense when I go back and listen to what Jeff Van Gundy had to say about the Boston Celtics essentially stepping in and extending a lifeline. That to me would indicate that he had no idea that it was coming. Now, if you look at some other people that were fired during that downsizing, different people had different situations. If you look at Keyshawn Johnson, for example, he was able to land on his feet and immediately he became the partner for Skip Bayless on Undisputed. Max Kellerman, we haven't heard from him. We don't know what's going to happen. Marcellus Wiley has mentioned it on our show that he believes Max Kellerman is going to make a return to sports media probably at the end of this year. We have to wait and see. I don't know. But in the looking at the situation and what Stan Van Gundy had to say, that's exactly what you would expect a brother to say, right? He would first of all support his brother and say that, hey, look, when they did that, they put him in a very difficult situation, and I'm sure it was the case. You heard what some of the personal challenges that he went through, and I think that ESPN's NBA Finals team, their coverage overall suffered. It really did. ESPN has been heavily criticized over their coverage of this last NBA Finals, where it was just basically them spamming ads at their consumers, where during their halftime show, they would only get about a minute and a half, 2 minutes and a half worth of basketball analysis in a halftime show, and then immediately cut to a whole bunch of commercials. And then if you look at the cast that they have covering the finals with Doris Burke, JJ Redick, and Mike Breen, a lot of people were like, yeah, they're okay, they're all right, but they preferred Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy. And I did too, if I'm just being funky. Like, they were a really, really great trio. Now, they kept Mike Breen, obviously, because they need him. But it was a mistake, them letting him go. But at the same time, as Stephen A. Smith has said in the past, that the company had the downside. They had the cord cut. And he said that no one should be surprised because more of this is most likely going to take place in the future. So these are my thoughts on the topic. What I want to know from you guys, what do you think about what Stan Van Gundy had to say? Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comments section. We catch you guys on the next show. Peace.